Growing up with diabetes, I was told no a ton. You heard the story of what I went through in my baseball career, how many times I was told no, how brutal it was to continue to get told no. And whether it had to do with my diabetes or my talent level or whatever it was, I was told no so many times. I feel like if you have diabetes, you have this ability to frame it however you want to frame it. You can look at diabetes as the worst thing that has ever happened to you in this ball and chain that you never get to let go of for the entire remainder of your life. And you can also choose to look at it as, hey, this is something that I could make into the best thing that's ever happened to me. And this wasn't the ideal hand that I was dealt, but I still did really well, all things considered. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. It is National Diabetes Awareness Month. If you have not heard, it is every November. So we're going to just jump right into today's episode and go into a little bit about what diabetes has taught me. And this isn't necessarily just in the context of, what it's taught me health-wise, but I feel like if you have diabetes, of course, you have this ability to frame it however you want to frame it. You can look at diabetes as the worst thing that has ever happened to you in this ball and chain that you never get to let go of for the entire remainder of your life. And you can also choose to look at it as, hey, this is something that I could make into the best thing that's ever happened to me. And this wasn't the ideal hand that I was dealt, but I still did really well, all things considered. So just a few lessons that diabetes has taught me, Ben, as an individual, having lived with it now for over 24 years, which is still mind-boggling to me. It's like, 75% of my life already with diabetes. So the first thing I would say, and the first thing that you probably would agree with, if, again, you're choosing to look at it from a frame of awesomeness. Diabetes has taught me a level of resiliency unlike anything I have ever imagined having. And because of this, if I really want to unpack it, let's go back to when I was first diagnosed. I was 7 years old, and you've heard the story. It was the first episode of this podcast where I go through my diagnosis story, and my family had moved and was in a new place and a new school and didn't know what was going on. And suddenly my blood sugars are having to get controlled and I'm taking injections and everything got flipped on its head. But the thing about it, and it's similar to what I alluded to just a minute ago, right? You can choose to let it run your entire existence. And diabetes is going to knock you on your ass. I don't care who you are, how great your control is. It will knock you on your ass. Look what happened roughly a month ago. I had a site come out and my blood sugar hit the highest I've ever been in my entire 24 plus years of having diabetes. And that level of resiliency, that ability to bounce back and that ability to say, hey, I just failed at whatever just happened. And I am not only going to pick myself up, dust myself off and go right back at it again, but I'm going to go back at it again and do better this time, is an absolute gift that we have as people with diabetes that is naturally built in. Because you hear all the time, you talk to people, who have played sports, and you talk to people who are in business and who are in different competitive arenas, and they'll always say, you want to fail, you want to fail, you want to fail. Because the faster you fail, the faster you're going to succeed. And there's a lot of validity to that. But what I can tell you is with diabetes, you have a lot of opportunities to fail because you're making so many decisions every single day. And every time you fail, you're getting one step closer to having amazingly good blood sugar. Think about it. You go out to a restaurant. Good example with this would be when I was a kid growing up and dessert just felt like at a restaurant was always going to be off limits. I don't know what's in it. I don't know the carb count. There's a million excuses I could have, right? I don't know how big the portion is. What if I'm sharing it? What if I'm not? So I just straight up wouldn't have it. And that was a belief that I thought was actually the case. It was a limiting belief that I lived by. And there was one in particular. It was bread pudding. I remember I had seen it on the menu a couple times, never had it before. before. I went off to college and they had it in the cafeteria. And I thought, oh, well, they have some nutrition facts. Allegedly, it's this many carbs. I think it was about like 48 for a serving. And I'm like, I'm going to try some. And I had some and it was amazing. And ironically, in retrospect, it probably wasn't actually that good because it was from the college, but it still was this incredible flavor profile that I had never experienced before. And I'm like, I really like this stuff. I want to have more. And so, of course, I'm trying it periodically. And the first time I had it, I went. My blood sugar was high as a kite. I probably got to 355, something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but I know it was in the 350s. And I could have just said, well, you know what? The heck with it. You know, every time I've tried to have dessert as a kid, I'd go to get Culver's custard because that was a big thing in Wisconsin was custard. You know, I'd have frozen custard, blood sugar go to 400. Have this other dessert, blood sugar go to 350. I could have just said, you know what? Here's just another one to add to the list. Let's just add this dessert. Off limits, can't have it. No, I said, I'm going to figure this out. The nutrition facts were wrong. Shockingly, the ones that were posted by the school tended to be wrong. But that being said, I said, I'm going to figure this out. And I used that opportunity to say, I'm going to go figure this out a different way. This said 48 grams. I'm going to try a different serving. I'm going to try the same serving size every single time. I'm going to take different amounts. I'm going to assess the carbs differently. I'm going to look at other sources of bread pudding. I'm going to look at, similar flavors from different recipes and different places and get an idea. And I didn't go on this fact-finding mission where I'm writing the equivalent of a research paper hypothesis to be able to dose for this. But what I did was I spent 3 minutes trying to look at other options that might be similar so I could better inform the choice that I was going to make. And lo and behold, within a few times, I had the bread pudding nailed down. And now it's by far my favorite dessert. And when I travel places with Amelia, we go to different stadiums for sports and we'll go eat in the vicinity. If they have bread pudding on the menu, we're trying it. And not only are we, kind of bread pudding snobs because we really, really like it, but at the same time, I have a really good idea of how to dose for it because I was willing to be resilient. I was willing to say, hey, this food knocked me on my ass, but I'm going to choose to get up and figure it out. And when you have that mentality with one food in one situation, that will bleed into other things. I don't like being told no. And growing up in a separate vein of resiliency with diabetes, I was told no a ton. You heard the story of what I went through in my baseball career, how many times I was told no, how brutal it was to continue to get told no. And whether it had to do with my diabetes or my talent level or whatever it was, I was told no so many times. And I still truly believe a lot of it stemmed from the liability from diabetes. And then as I got older, it was an easy excuse to say, well, the talent's just not there, Ben, sorry. And as a result of that, it kind of followed me from the time I was 12 until the time I graduated high school, at least within the realm of Wisconsin that I was in. And at the end of the day, when it comes to that, I could have said, well, they're telling me no, I'm going to let this dream go. And I adamantly refused because, from the time I was 7 until that point I was 12, I had failed so many times and said, I'm not quitting on this. I refuse to quit. I will not quit. This is going to happen come hell or high water. And if I have to, go around, if I'm hitting a wall, I have to walk around the wall, I'll do it. If I have to climb over the wall, I'll do it. Whatever it takes, I will make this happen. And diabetes teaches you that if you choose to approach it in that fashion. You can very much so choose to approach it as, well, my blood sugar went high, that's the end of that food. Well, my blood sugar did this, that's the end of that. My number went low, can't do that again. Number went super, super, super high, never gonna eat at that place again. Number went super, super high, never gonna go to this place or this experience or whatever it is. You can choose to do that all the time. But if you look at it from a resilient standpoint of, I have so many opportunities that I can try again. Think about baseball, right? Literal baseball. You have a player who hits 500 times in a season. You have 500 opportunities to succeed, and you're going to fail. In that case, if you're a good player, you fail in more than 2/3 of them. In diabetes, you have thousands of opportunities to succeed. And maybe you go, 8 for 10 or 9 for 10 or, 6 for 7, or maybe you have a day where you go 3 for 13 and it does not feel good. But what I can say is you have more opportunities the next day to pick yourself up off the mat and get back at it again. So resiliency and being able and willing to say, hey, I'm going to run through a brick wall if I have to make this happen. Diabetes can absolutely teach you that. And I would say it's one of the biggest things it has taught me over my life so far. So that's number one. Number two, and this one may not come as a surprise, but diabetes has really taught me how to live a healthier lifestyle and be more in tune with my body than I think I would have been without. And I'm going to pose this situation. I'm sure you've thought of it at least a dozen times in your life, but the whole, if I didn't have diabetes, where would I be right now situation? And I've always wondered that, like, if I didn't have diabetes, would I be a dietitian? Would I be a diabetes educator? What would I be doing with my life? Would I be, working out 5 days a week consistently? Would I be focusing on my food? And the easy answer to say is yes, right? But the real question is, do you really think you actually would be if you didn't have to put as much effort in? I think in my opinion, I think I would have eventually ended up at this point, but I may not have been there as quickly. It might have taken me longer to get there. Or, perhaps I don't really, if you don't know me that well, I don't really drink. So, maybe I would have drank a little bit when I was in college to, learn about how that life is and maybe, try out the party life or whatever, right? There's different things that may have been different in life, but I feel like I have such a better pulse, literally and figuratively, of what my health situation looks like because of living with diabetes, because you're so tapped in. Again, you can choose to not be tapped in, but diabetes to a degree, even if you're choosing not to, you still have to be focused at least a little bit. And I feel like because I do put a pretty solid focus on my blood sugar so I can feel my best and, do the things I want to do with the people I want to do them with at the times I want to do them at, because of that focus, I feel like there's just this innate sense of, hey, I'm doing great, or hey, I'm not doing as well. Plus you get the automatic feedback of, oh, my blood sugar is 217, something's off. What do I need to do to tweak this so I feel a little bit better? And then also, obviously there's that cascade of, well, if my number's in range, I'm going to feel great. So what keeps my number in range? Well, if I'm on point with my food, if I'm on point with my activity, and I'm paying attention to some of the other external factors. And so I feel like just the awareness surrounding health, diabetes has taught me how to really be dialed into that. And you hear about the people, they go biohacking, they get, the people without diabetes who wear CGMs, which I still think is completely pointless because, as an aside, I went to a breakfast once with a dietitian a few years ago that wore a CGM, didn't have diabetes. We ate a massive stack of pancakes and dude's blood sugar got to 94. So tell me that the CGM's really helpful. Okay, cool. There are people who are wearing CGMs and they're monitoring their sleep and they're monitoring their strain from activity and they're monitoring their hydration, all these different things, which I think is amazing. But with diabetes, you're effectively doing that naturally because your goal is to stay in range and you can treat it like a game. And honestly, to a degree, there's a part of me that thinks if you do gamify it a little bit and make it fun of, hey, I know if I hit these targets, my blood sugars are going to be better. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to have more energy. It just makes it that much more fun. And that's how many days in a row can I get this streak to be? I feel like that's the beauty of it. And the awareness of health just is part of your life. It is built in whether you want it to be or not. And of course, there's people on the other end of the spectrum that will say, I don't pay attention at all. And true story I'm about to tell you, I went to an event probably about 10 years ago, which is crazy. It's been 10 years, but it was a Students with Diabetes event. This was 2013. And I remember we were in little groups and everyone was roughly around, same age at the time, early mid 20s. We were talking about blood sugars and somebody there said they had not tested their blood sugar. I remember the date because of what happened. So they hadn't tested their blood sugar in a really long time. And the date was June 1st. And why I remember this was because they pulled out their meter and they had said it had been about 3 months since they had tested. I didn't believe them. They pulled out their meter, which I'm shocked they had, knowing that they hadn't tested. And they put the first number on and their most recent date was February 28th. And so I asked them, I'm like, well, what do you do for dosing? How do you figure out what to dose? Oh, I just pick a number. And so I'm like, well, what if you're 500? What if you're 400? What is your blood sugar most? I don't know what my blood sugar is. I just kind of dose. I was horrified. I was absolutely horrified. I still am thinking about this situation because, again, you have that choice to be aware of your health or just completely neglect it. And this individual, I don't remember their name. I hope that whoever they are, if you're listening, I hope you're doing amazing. If you're not listening, I still hope you're doing amazing. But it's one of those things where it's scary and you can choose to completely neglect it. But I feel like at baseline, having diabetes, you're more aware of your health than 80% of the population. The key then becomes, are you willing to put that little extra oomph behind it so you're more aware than 99% of the population and you're optimizing your health, you're feeling amazing, and you don't feel any restriction from it. That's what my team and I do with people, right? Is we help you be in a situation where you're eating what you want, you're doing what you want, you're active, you're living life, you're feeling amazing, you're looking amazing. Everything is coming into play. Everything's falling into place the way you want it to. And the diabetes just kind of humming in the background. That's the whole goal. And then you are so optimal from a health standpoint that it doesn't feel like you even have it. And if you go to a doctor and you get a blood panel or they look at your eyes or whatever, they don't even look and they say, I can't even tell you have diabetes. That's the thing, because you're so dialed in with your health and it becomes part of that lifestyle. And I don't know about you, but I would think you would want to feel really, really good the majority of the time, right? So diabetes from a health perspective has really helped teach me how to be tapped in on my health and also just how to make it so it doesn't overwhelm your whole life. Because a lot of other people, I want to get my blood sugars under control. but it's so hard and I have to do so many different things, and it's valid, right? I think there was that stat I mentioned the other episode where if you did every single thing you need to do for your blood sugars every single day, it would take hours, and we don't have time for that. But there's ways to do it where you can still be dialed in, you can still be aware, you can still be tapped in, and have it only take, a few minutes here and there, and you're still able to manage really, really well without much of a risk of complications. There are ways to do that. And so I really just want to emphasize that from my perspective, diabetes has been really helpful on the health journey and staying tapped in and being really focused on being the best version of myself that I can. And then I really think too, so we've talked about resiliency, we've talked about being really tapped into health. Another thing that diabetes has really taught me, this one's goofy, and this is like a little one, but I have to mention it because I would be very sad if I didn't, is mental math. I feel like I've gotten way better at. And again, this will be a little quickie and a goofy one, but I remember being in middle school and the school nurse was a new school. And they're like, "Oh, you have diabetes. Isn't it terrible? Isn't it awful?" And I looked at her, I'm like, "No, do you know how good at math I am in my head? Like fractions and stuff like that." This was before the bolus calculators existed. I could just rattle off, "Oh, my insulin to carb ratio is this. And I mean, this many carbs," I'd be like, "It's 4.2. And they'd be like, "Whoa." And I just feel like that is something that it just happens, right? It's again, you can get good at anything in life with repetition. If you want to get better at basketball, you're going to, in ball handling, you're going to dribble a basketball a bunch. You're going to do different drills. And by the time you've done it every single day for 2 straight months, you're going to be really good, right? You want to get good at writing music. You're going to sit down with some instrumentals and start writing to it. And every single day, you're going to get really good. If you want to get good at mental math, give someone an insulin to carb ratio and carb amounts and have them do that math. They're going to get really good at rattling it off the top of their head. So just something to think about there. I know that I've seen a clip somewhere on social media about, somebody who's faster than a calculator. And I feel like genuinely there's times where that can't happen because of diabetes as a whole. So just a quick little fun aside. That's something that diabetes taught me, but it's definitely not your typical traditional thing that you would expect. All right. The third real thing that diabetes has taught me is giving myself some grace, cutting myself some slack, not being such a perfectionist all the time. And not everybody struggles with this, but I know in my own world, my own life, very much I've been that person that's got to be 100%. And I'm the person that will focus on, when I was in school as a kid, I'd get a 97 on an exam. And instead of being like, "Yeah, I just got a 97, I would think of immediately, well, what was the 3% I got wrong? And that's what everybody's brain is wired to do, is to automatically go to that 3% wrong instead of the 97% right. And so I feel like in a case like this with diabetes, giving yourself a break, cutting yourself some slack, it's something that's with us 24/7, 365, no matter how you slice it, right? There's no vacation, there's no time off. It's with you forever. You've got to deal with it every single day. But what I will say is it's really taught me how to not be as hard on myself, because this part as well as I do. You can do everything right. You can sit down with a meal. The meal, the carb count, you calculate it out, you take the dose on time, you've done everything correctly, and your blood sugar just doesn't cooperate. And that happens to all of us. And of course, like we've talked about, there's that mentality of, well, you can choose to look at it one way or another, and you can. But I think the more important thing is a lot of times you might jump to that negative conclusion, and you might jump to the, well, I'm a failure, this sucks, everything's terrible. And that's totally normal. It's totally natural. But what I will also challenge you on is cutting yourself slack. Saying to yourself, "Hey, I didn't nail it this time," and that's okay. Similar to what I mentioned with the bread pudding. I could have said, "Well, I'm done," the first time I didn't succeed. But the more important thing is allowing yourself to cut yourself that slack. Being resilient, picking yourself up off the mat is one thing, but the step before that I didn't mention that I totally should have is being okay with cutting yourself some slack. You're not going to be perfect in anything in life. You're not going to be perfect, and that is okay. And being willing to take a deep breath, saying, "Hey, wasn't perfect, didn't do great. How can I do better the next time?" That is something I feel like that it goes way, 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 way beyond everything. And people just don't talk about it. And it's something that has to be mentioned and has to be said. And one other thing that I feel like I'd be upset if I didn't mention would be the power of community. Because I will be straight up honest, without diabetes, of course, like we have mentioned before, I don't know, maybe I'd be a dietitian, diabetes educator still, but who knows? But what I will say is without diabetes, there's a lot of people, there are thousands of people that I would have never gotten the pleasure of connecting with. And I wouldn't have necessarily changed the lives of the people that I've gotten to impact with me and my team. But also there's so many amazing social connections, friends that I've made, and lifelong friends at that. that have diabetes and people that I've met as a result of that. Like there were people that, came to my wedding. It was a very small wedding, very, very small, the equivalent of, groomsmen and bridesmaids, effectively an immediate family. And there were people there that I met because of the diabetes community. Like there are people when I travel, and I'm grateful to, know I can go to different cities and know, hey, there's someone here who has diabetes who I know, who I'm friends with, who I can link up with. And the only reason I know that this person exists is because of diabetes. And there's amazing groups, there's amazing communities and organizations that come together and bring people together that have diabetes, who have that common thing. So everyone gets it. Oh my goodness, these people know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night with a blood sugar of 57 and want to eat the entire fridge, and they get it. And you can bond over that thing. And these people are incredible. There's so many incredible people. And if you feel like you're listening to this, you're in your town, you're like, hey, I don't know anyone who has diabetes. I don't know anyone in my town who has it. I'm not sure what to do. Instead, say, hey, let me go on social media. Let me see what people exist. Maybe there's Facebook groups for your area of people with diabetes. There's, different organizations. There's ADA, there's JDRF. Maybe you're going to go to a national conference. There's, children with diabetes. There's the AID conference for the scientific sessions. There's, there's other conferences and other organizations and events where you can go locally a lot of times and meet other people who also live with diabetes. There's walks in your area more than likely. So be a little creative, dig for it. If you're not immediately, holy cow, there's communities everywhere. Go online. The online community is an amazing place as well for meeting new people that could be living close to you, or maybe you're introduced to someone else that does live close by. I can guarantee you there's more people with diabetes in your area than you realize. You probably just haven't met them yet. And sometimes just having that bond and that intro of we both get it because we go through the same thing can be massive and lead to amazing, amazing lifelong friendships. So that's a few of the things diabetes has taught me in honor of National Diabetes Awareness Month. So I'm very excited to be able to share a few of those things with you. And in addition, in honor of National Diabetes Awareness Month, I am running a completely free, on the house, 7-day drop your average blood sugar challenge, because I want to make sure that it's diabetes month. You're getting a head start on having incredible blood sugars and just getting a little taste of how you can get things better in a very short period of time and seeing that immediate result. So if you're interested in that, check the show notes. I will have the link for you to join us. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be 7 days in the middle of the month. Get you prepared before Thanksgiving. So if you've got questions, obviously holler at me over on Instagram or TikTok. And with that, I will see you in the next episode, and happy Diabetes Month.